Ethan Carter stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, absently swirling a glass of bourbon as he watched the Seattle skyline shimmer in the late afternoon sun. At 31 he'd achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of, or at least, everything he thought he wanted 10 years ago when he'd made the choices that led him here. His tech company, Innovatech Solutions, had just closed another record-breaking quarter, and the business magazines couldn't get enough of the young prodigy who'd revolutionized artificial intelligence applications in healthcare. But lately the victory felt hollow. The emptiness of his massive corner office seemed to mock him, especially during quiet moments like these when he allowed his mind to wander back to simpler times. Back to Sarah. Back to when success meant stealing kisses between college classes and sharing dreams over cold pizza in their tiny studio apartment. His executive assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, interrupting his reverie. "Mr. Carter, the board members are waiting in the conference room for the quarterly review." Ethan straightened his Italian silk tie, pushed thoughts of the past aside and strode toward the door. This was his life now: meetings, mergers, and maintaining the carefully crafted image of the brilliant but ruthless CEO who'd never let anything stand in the way of his vision. Not even love. He was halfway through his presentation when he saw her. Through the glass walls of the conference room, across the busy street below, walking out of the Children's Arts Center that had recently opened in the renovated historic building opposite his corporate headquarters. Sarah Mitchell, her chestnut hair longer now, but still with that same graceful way of moving that had captured his attention in their first year of college. Ethan's words faltered mid-sentence as he watched her bend down to speak to a small boy emerging from the building behind her. The child looked up, laughing at something she'd said, and Ethan's world tilted on its axis. The boy's features, his mannerisms, the way he ran his hand through his dark hair, it was like looking at his own childhood photos. "Mr. Carter?" One of the board members cleared their throat. "The projection figures for next quarter?" But Ethan couldn't tear his eyes away from the scene unfolding below. The boy had to be around 9 years old. 9 years since he'd left Sarah behind to pursue his dreams in Silicon Valley. 9 years since he'd convinced himself that their breakup was for the best, that they'd both be better off following their separate paths. 9 years since. "I apologize," he heard himself say, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "Something urgent has come up. Ms. Ryan will continue the presentation." He gestured to his CFO, who looked startled but quickly took control of the meeting. Ethan grabbed his phone, fingers trembling slightly as he pulled up his private investigator's number. "Jack, I need everything you can find on Sarah Mitchell's current life. Especially any information about a child." He paused, watching as Sarah and the boy climbed into a modest SUV. "And Jack? I need it today." As he watched their car disappear into Seattle's afternoon traffic, memories he'd buried years ago came flooding back. The night Sarah had tried to tell him something important, something that could change everything, but he'd been too absorbed in his startup's launch preparations to really listen. The way she'd looked at him the last time they spoke, her eyes filled with a mixture of love, disappointment, and something else he couldn't identify at the time. Understanding dawned now, heavy and sharp as broken glass. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty conference room, his reflection in the window looking as shaken as he felt. The empire he'd built, the success he'd achieved. Suddenly none of it seemed to matter compared to what he might have lost. No, what he had lost, through his own blind ambition. And now, watching that car vanish around a corner, Ethan Carter, the man who prided himself on controlling every aspect of his life, realized he was about to enter uncharted territory. He had a son. And the woman he'd never truly stopped loving had been raising him alone all these years, right here in Seattle, practically in the shadow of his success. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent the last decade building a company that specialized in connecting people through technology, yet he'd failed to maintain the most important connection of all. Now, watching his perfectly ordered world begin to unravel, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to change. The question was, would Sarah and his son want him in their lives after all this time? And more importantly, did he deserve a second chance at the family he'd unknowingly left behind? Sarah Mitchell pulled into the driveway of her modest but well-kept craftsman home, glancing in the rearview mirror at her son Lucas, who was still chattering excitedly about his art class project. His dark hair fell across his forehead in the same way his father's used to, and for the millionth time she felt that familiar ache in her chest. "Mom, did you see how Mrs. Anderson loved my robot drawing? She said I could have a real future in tech art." Lucas beamed, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Those eyes, they were all Ethan, right down to the slight crinkle at the corners when he smiled. "Of course she did, sweetie. You're incredibly talented, Sarah replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. She'd seen Ethan today standing in that gleaming tower across from the art center. Even through the tinted glass, she'd recognized his silhouette immediately. 10 years hadn't changed that. Inside their home, Lucas dropped his backpack by the stairs and headed straight for the kitchen. "Can I have a snack before I start homework?" he asked, already pulling open the fridge. Sarah watched him, marveling at how much he'd grown. She'd made the right choice staying in Seattle, even though every business magazine cover, every news article about Innovateca's success, felt like a knife twisting in her heart. Her best friend Amy's voice echoed in her head from their conversation last week. "He has a right to know, Sarah." Both of them do. But Amy hadn't been there during those early days, when Sarah had tried desperately to tell Ethan about the pregnancy. When his assistant kept saying he was too busy with the startup to take her calls. When the engagement ring she'd once worn felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket as she mailed it back to his parents' house. "Mom?" Earth to Mom. Lucas waved a hand in front of her face, jolting her back to the present. "Can Jake come over to work on our science project tomorrow?" Sarah smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Of course, as long as his mom's okay with it." She watched as Lucas pulled out his phone, a basic model, nothing like the cutting-edge devices his father's company produced, to text his friend. Later that evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, Sarah sat at her small home office desk, staring at the pile of bills and her half-finished graphic design projects. She'd built a decent life for them, turned her artistic talents into a successful freelance career that let her be there for Lucas. But lately, his questions about his father had become more frequent, more specific. "Do you think he looks like me?" Lucas had asked just last week, pointing to a magazine photo of Ethan at some tech conference. Sarah had nearly choked on her coffee. "I mean, we both have dark hair and stuff." Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister Lisa. "Saw the news about Innovateca's expansion. You okay?" Sarah sighed, typing back a quick, "I'm fine," before setting the phone face down. She pulled out her worn sketchbook, flipping to the pages of drawings she'd done of Lucas over the years. Sometimes she'd mail copies to Ethan's parents, who'd maintained a quiet, distant relationship with her. They sent birthday cards to Lucas, signed "From your grandparents," never mentioning their son. Sarah ran her fingers over a sketch of 3-year-old Lucas playing with robot toys. Even then, he'd shown an interest in technology that seemed written in his DNA. Now at 9, he was already coding simple games, taking apart old computers to see how they worked. Just like his father had at that age, according to his grandmother's stories. A notification popped up on her computer. Another article about Ethan Carter, Seattle's tech wunderkind. The photo showed him looking polished and serious in an expensive suit, so different from the passionate, messy-haired college student she'd fallen in love with. The one who used to say they'd change the world together, her art and his technology creating something revolutionary. "We did create something revolutionary," she whispered to the empty room, picking up a framed photo of Lucas from her desk. "Just not in the way we planned." Her phone buzzed again, an email notification from Lucas's school about the upcoming science fair. He'd been working for weeks on his project, an AI-assisted art program that could learn and replicate drawing styles. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. How much longer could she keep the truth from him when every day he became more and more like the father he'd never met? The irony of their situation wasn't lost on her. Here she was, living in the same city as one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country, watching their son inherit his father's brilliant mind, while Ethan remained completely unaware of his existence. Or at least he had been unaware. That moment today when she'd felt his gaze through the glass, something had changed. She could feel it in the air, like the charged atmosphere before a storm. Sarah closed her sketchbook and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there, Ethan Carter was probably still in his office, making decisions that would affect thousands of lives. But for the first time in 9 years, she wondered if he was thinking about the 2 lives that should have mattered most. Ethan paced his penthouse apartment, phone pressed to his ear as Jack, his PI, delivered the information he'd been waiting for all evening. Each detail hit him like a physical blow. Lucas James Mitchell, born March 15, 2015. Currently enrolled in Seattle STEM Academy, top of his class in computer science and mathematics. His emergency contact information lists only his mother, Sarah Mitchell, and his aunt, Lisa Mitchell. No father listed on the birth certificate. Ethan sank into his leather armchair, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "The timing matches perfectly," he said, his voice rough. "What else?" "The kid's already making waves in the tech community. Won 3 junior coding competitions this year alone." Created an AI art program that's gotten attention from several educational software companies. Jack paused. Sound familiar? Ethan closed his eyes, remembering his own childhood victories, the same drive to create and innovate. Where do they live? A Craftsman house in North Queen Anne. Sarah runs a successful graphic design business from home. She's done well, Ethan. The boy seems happy, well-adjusted. They have a good life. The words struck deeper than Jack could know. Sarah had built this life alone, while he'd been chasing his billions. His son, had inherited his passion for technology, was already following in his footsteps, and Ethan hadn't been there for any of it. After hanging up, Ethan pulled up Lucas's competition videos on his tablet. His hands shook as he pressed play, watching his son confidently explain his projects to judges. The similarities were uncanny, not just in looks but in mannerisms, in the way Lucas's eyes lit up when talking about technology. A notification popped up on his phone, tomorrow's schedule, packed with meetings and conference calls. Without hesitation, Ethan started canceling everything. For 10 years, his company had been his only priority. That ended now. Morning found him parked near the Seattle STEM Academy, watching students arrive. When Lucas hopped out of Sarah's SUV, Ethan's breath caught. The boy wore a tech company hoodie, not Innovatech, but a competitor's brand, and carried a laptop covered in coding stickers. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother. I just saw the tabloid photos. You know, don't you? After all these years, you finally know. Ethan stared at the screen, realizing his parents had known all along. Had been part of Lucas's life in some small way while he remained oblivious. Instead of responding, he pulled up Innovatech's upcoming events. The company's annual Young Innovators competition was next month. The perfect opportunity. He called his assistant. Kate, I need you to send a special invitation to Lucas Mitchell at Seattle STEM Academy. Personal invitation from the CEO to compete in the under-12 division. And Kate? Make sure his mother knows she's welcome to accompany him. It was a risk, possibly overstepping, but Ethan couldn't wait any longer. He'd missed 9 years of his son's life. He wouldn't miss another day if he could help it. Later that afternoon, he found himself back at the office, staring at an old photo on his phone, him and Sarah at their college graduation. Young and in love, full of dreams. The same dreams their son was now pursuing, unknowingly following both his parents' passions. His CFO, Ms. Ryan, knocked on his door. The board's asking questions about your behavior yesterday. Should I be concerned? Ethan looked up, a new determination in his eyes. No. But things are going to change around here. It's time Innovatech remembered its original mission, connecting people, bridging gaps, bringing families together. Starting with mine. As the sun set over Seattle, Ethan Carter, the man who'd built an empire on artificial intelligence, realized that all his technological innovations meant nothing compared to the flesh and blood connection he'd discovered. Now he just had to figure out how to bridge a 9-year gap without destroying the life Sarah had carefully built for their son. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. Mom. Mom. Lucas burst through the front door, waving an envelope with the distinctive Innovatech logo. You're not going to believe this. His backpack slid off his shoulder, forgotten in his excitement. The CEO personally invited me to compete in the Young Innovators competition. Me. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. She barely noticed the hot liquid splashing her feet as she stared at the envelope in Lucas's hand. Her son's face fell at her reaction. Mom? What's wrong? Aren't you excited? Sarah forced a smile, her hands trembling as she grabbed paper towels to clean up the spill. Of course I am, sweetie. It's just, that's a really big competition. The biggest. Lucas was bouncing on his toes now. And look, they specifically mentioned my AI art program. Mr. Carter himself wrote that he was impressed by my coding competitions. Can you believe it? Mr. Carter. The name echoed in Sarah's head as she read the invitation. There it was in black and white, a personal note from Ethan, expressing interest in Lucas's technological innovations. Her eyes caught on the postscript. Parents/guardians are encouraged to attend all competition events. Jake's mom already said she'd drive us, Lucas continued, misreading her silence. She says it's too good an opportunity to pass up. Sarah looked at her son, really looked at him. His eyes sparkled with the same passion she used to see in Ethan's when he talked about his tech dreams. How could she deny Lucas this chance just because she was afraid of facing his father? Her phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. He knows, doesn't he? The invitation just crossed my desk at work. Sarah had almost forgotten her sister worked in Innovatech's HR department. She'd taken the job 2 years ago, promising to keep an eye on Ethan from a distance. Lucas, honey, why don't you go up and start your homework? We'll talk more about the competition over dinner. Once Lucas bounded upstairs, Sarah called Amy. Her friend answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you. Have you seen the news? What news? Ethan Carter canceled all his meetings yesterday. There are photos of him parked outside the STEM Academy this morning. Social media is buzzing with speculation. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair. He sent Lucas a personal invitation to the Young Innovators competition. Oh my God. Amy paused. What are you going to do? Sarah walked to her office, pulling up the framed photo of Lucas at his first coding competition. He was missing his front teeth in the picture, but his smile was pure joy as he held up his ribbon. I don't think I have a choice. Lucas wants this so badly. And he deserves the opportunity. Even if it means facing Ethan. Sarah touched the screen of her tablet, where the Innovatech logo glowed accusingly. I knew this day might come. I just didn't expect it to be like this. That evening over dinner, Lucas couldn't stop talking about the competition. My AI art program could actually help people, Mom. Like real people. Mr. Carter's note said Innovatech is especially interested in tech that brings creativity and innovation together. Sarah felt her heart squeeze. That had been her and Ethan's shared dream once, merging art and technology to make the world better. Now their son had found his way to the same vision all on his own. I have something to tell you, Lucas said suddenly, his voice growing serious. I kind of already knew who my dad was. I figured it out a while ago. Sarah's fork clattered to her plate. What? The way you look at his pictures in magazines. How Grandma and Grandpa send those cards but never mention him. Plus. Lucas grinned, pointing to his own face. I'm not blind, Mom. I look just like him. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks before she could stop them. Lucas, It's okay. He reached across the table to grab her hand. I understand why you didn't tell me. You were protecting me. But Mom, maybe this is our chance? To be honest with each other? Sarah stared at her brilliant, compassionate son, wondering when he'd grown so wise. The invitation sat between them on the table, Ethan's signature a silent acknowledgement of all the years of secrets and separation. You're right, she finally said. No more secrets. But Lucas, whatever happens at this competition, whatever your father does or doesn't do, you know you're my whole world, right? I know, Mom. He squeezed her hand. And you're mine. But maybe our world has room to grow a little bigger? Sarah looked at the hope in her son's eyes, Ethan's eyes, and knew she had to be brave. For Lucas. For the family they might still become. Okay, she whispered. Let's enter this competition. Together. Ethan stood in his closet, discarding another tie onto the growing pile on his bed. The Young Innovators competition was tomorrow, and suddenly nothing felt right. A knock at his door interrupted his frantic wardrobe search. Come in, he called, already knowing who it would be. His mother, Grace Carter, stepped into the room, taking in the chaos with knowing eyes. I haven't seen you this nervous since your first investor pitch, she said softly. Though I suppose meeting your son for the first time is a bit more important than any business deal. Ethan turned to face her. Why didn't you tell me? All these years you and Dad knew. Grace sat on the edge of his bed, picking up a discarded tie. Sarah made her wishes clear. She wanted Lucas to have a normal childhood, away from the spotlight that follows you. We respected that choice even though it broke our hearts. She paused. And yours, though you didn't know it. Is he? Ethan's voice cracked. What's he like? He's brilliant, kind, and has your determination. Last Christmas he sent us a digital card he coded himself. It had little animated robots dancing to Jingle Bells. Grace smiled at the memory. He's everything you were at that age, but with Sarah's artistic soul. Ethan sank down beside his mother, head in his hands. I've missed so much. His first words, first steps, first day of school. Then don't miss any more, Grace said firmly. But Ethan, remember, this isn't about you and your regrets. This is about Lucas. He needs his father, not the CEO of Innovatech. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his home office, reviewing Lucas's competition entry for the 100th time. The AI art program was remarkable, intuitive, creative, and far beyond what most adults could create, let alone a 9-year-old. Pride swelled in his chest, followed immediately by a wave of sadness. His son had inherited his technical brilliance and his mother's artistic vision, creating something beautiful from both their talents. His phone lit up with a text from Kate, his assistant. Final competition arrangements confirmed. Private judging room prepared as requested. Security has been briefed to be discreet. Ethan had orchestrated everything carefully, ensuring the media wouldn't get wind of any potential family drama. The last thing he wanted was for Lucas's first meeting with him to become tabloid fodder. He pulled up an email from Lisa Mitchell, Sarah's sister, who had quietly helped coordinate from within Innovatech. They're coming. Sarah's nervous but Lucas is over the moon. Don't screw this up, boss. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Ethan wandered into his spare room, the one he'd impulsively started converting into a bedroom for Lucas, even though he had no idea if he'd ever get the chance to have his son stay over. He'd researched kids' interests for hours, trying to strike a balance between tech and art. A top-of-the-line computer setup sat beside an easel and art supplies. A robotics kit waited unopened on the desk. Too much, he'd asked his father Tom when showing him the room. It's a start, Tom had replied. But what that boy needs most is just his father. The real you son. Not the corporate version. Ethan picked up a framed photo from his desk, himself at age 9, accepting an award at his first science fair. His parents had been there, cheering him on. Would Lucas want him there for his future achievements? Would he even get the chance? A notification popped up on his phone, another tabloid article speculating about his strange behavior lately. Tech titan having mental breakdown? The headline screamed. Ethan laughed despite himself. If they only knew the truth, that the great Ethan Carter, who'd built an empire on connecting people through technology, couldn't figure out how to connect with his own son. He pulled up the security footage from the day he'd first seen them outside the art center. Lucas's laugh, even without sound, was clearly visible. The way he moved, talked, gestured, it was like watching his own childhood home videos. Please, he whispered to the empty room, please let me be part of his life. Tomorrow would change everything. In less than 24 hours, he'd be face to face with the family he never knew he had. The empire he'd built, the success he'd achieved, none of it seemed to matter now. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter was terrified of failure because this time, failure meant losing something far more precious than money or status. He had one chance to prove he could be the father Lucas deserved. One chance to show Sarah that the ambitious college kid who'd broken her heart had grown into a man worthy of their trust. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough, and yet he wished he had more time to prepare, to become someone deserving of the title, Dad. The Innovatech headquarters buzzed with excitement on competition day. Young contestants and their parents filled the massive lobby, their chatter echoing off the glass and steel surfaces. Sarah stood at the registration desk, gripping Lucas's hand perhaps a bit too tightly. Mom, you're squishing my fingers, Lucas whispered, his other hand clutching his laptop bag. Everything's going to be okay. Sarah loosened her grip, amazed at how their roles had reversed, her 9-year-old son comforting her. She watched him looking around the lobby in awe, his eyes wide as he took in the cutting-edge technology displays and the massive digital wall showing past competition highlights. Lucas Mitchell? A friendly voice called. Kate, Ethan's assistant, approached them with a warm smile. We're so glad you could make it. Mr. Carter has arranged for you to present in our special projects room. She glanced at Sarah, her expression softening with understanding. If you'll both follow me? As they walked through the building, Lucas bounced with each step. Mom, look at all this tech. And that's a quantum computing display. And those are the new Innovatech AR glasses. His excitement was contagious despite Sarah's nerves. The special projects room was quieter, more intimate than the main competition area. A few judges sat at a curved table and there, standing by the window, was Ethan. He turned as they entered and for a moment time seemed to stop. Lucas froze mid-step, his grip on his laptop tightening. The resemblance between father and son, face to face for the first time, was striking. They even stood the same way, shoulders squared, head slightly tilted. Welcome, Ethan said softly, his eyes moving from Lucas to Sarah and back again. I'm really glad you came. Sarah felt her heart racing. Ethan looked exactly the same and completely different, still handsome, but with subtle lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours and heavy responsibilities. Hi, Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I'm Lucas. But I guess you know that already. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. I do. I've watched all your coding competition videos. Your AI art program is incredible. Really? Lucas's face lit up. Did you see how I integrated the neural network with the color recognition algorithms? Just like that, the tension broke. Father and son dove into a technical discussion that left the judges smiling and Sarah fighting back tears. They had the same way of talking with their hands when excited, the same little furrow between their brows when concentrating. Lucas set up his presentation, occasionally glancing at Ethan as if to make sure he was still there. When he started demonstrating his program, Sarah noticed Ethan mouthing along with some of the technical terms, pride shining in his eyes. The thing is, Lucas explained to the judges, art and technology don't have to be separate. My mom's an artist and she taught me that creativity isn't just about drawing or painting. It's about seeing possibilities. So I thought, why not teach an AI to see possibilities too? Sarah caught Ethan's gaze then, both remembering their own long-ago conversations about merging their passions. Their son had found his way to the same conclusion, all on his own. The presentation was a triumph. As the judges conferred, Lucas turned to Ethan. Would you like to try it? I added some features since the video you saw. Ethan moved to the laptop, and Lucas guided his hand on the tablet. Together they created a digital artwork. Something new, something that could only exist because they were both there sharing that moment. Lucas, Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. I know I've missed so much. And I know I don't have any right to ask, but I'd really like to be part of your life. If you'll let me. Lucas looked at Sarah, who nodded through her tears. I'd like that, he said. I have so many questions. Like, did you really build your first computer at 8? Because I'm trying to build one now, but I keep having trouble with the motherboard configuration. As Lucas and Ethan bent over the laptop, their dark heads close together, Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. Grace and Tom Carter stood behind her, watching their son and grandson together for the first time. Thank you, Grace whispered. For raising such an amazing boy. For giving us all a second chance. Sarah watched as Ethan showed Lucas something on the screen, their matching smiles brightening the room. Maybe some connections she realized were written in code deeper than any computer could generate, in blood, in DNA, in the invisible lines that tied hearts together across time and distance. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. After the competition, when most participants had gone home, Lucas sat in Ethan's office, spinning slightly in the oversized leather chair behind the desk. Sarah watched from the doorway as Ethan showed their son the city view she'd once admired from afar. You can see my old college dorm from here, Ethan said, pointing to a distant building. That's where your mom and I first met. She was painting a mural in the student center, and I kept finding excuses to walk past. Mom never told me that part, Lucas grinned, shooting Sarah a look. She just said you were partners in a computer graphics class. Oh, we were, Sarah found herself saying, stepping into the office. After he finally got the courage to talk to me. The familiar teasing felt strange now, like speaking a language she hadn't used in years. Ethan's smile held a hint of their old warmth, tempered by time and regret. I have something to show you both, Ethan said suddenly. If you're willing to take a short drive? 20 minutes later they pulled up to Ethan's house. Lucas pressed his face against the car window, taking in the modern architecture. You live here? It looks like something from a sci-fi movie. It's just a house, Ethan said quietly. A pretty empty one actually. But I have a room I'd like you to see. Sarah's breath caught as they followed Ethan inside. The house was beautiful but felt unlived in, more like a magazine spread than a home. Until they reached the room Ethan had prepared for Lucas. I know it might be presumptuous, Ethan said quickly, watching Lucas's face as he took in the computer setup, art supplies and robotics kit. And of course it's completely up to you and your mom when or if you ever want to use it. But I wanted you to have a space here. Lucas walked around the room slowly, touching things with careful fingers. He paused at the desk, picking up a framed photo of Ethan at his first science fair. Next to it sat a printout of Lucas's recent coding competition win. You've been following my competitions? Lucas asked softly. Every single one I could find online, Ethan admitted. I'm so proud of everything you've achieved, Lucas. Even though I had no right to be proud. I wasn't there. But you want to be now? Lucas's voice held a mixture of hope and caution that made Sarah's heart ache. More than anything, Ethan replied. I know I can't make up for the past 9 years. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your future. Lucas looked at Sarah, seeking permission or reassurance. She nodded slightly, letting him make his own choice. Could we? Lucas hesitated. Could we maybe start with the computer build I'm working on? I really am stuck on that motherboard configuration. Ethan's face lit up. Of course. Actually, I might have some spare parts in my workshop we could use. Want to see? As the two headed down the hall, their excited tech talk fading into the distance, Sarah found herself alone in the room Ethan had created for their son. She noticed things she'd missed at first glance. Art books similar to ones Lucas loved, a desk lamp that could double as a magnifier for detailed work, a small robot kit she knew he'd been saving up for. Grace appeared in the doorway. He spent weeks getting everything perfect, she said softly. Tom and I almost had to force him to stop adding things. It's not too much, Sarah replied, surprising herself. It's exactly Lucas. From somewhere in the house came the sound of shared laughter. Sarah moved to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline now painted in sunset colors. The same view she'd seen Ethan admiring that day through his office windows, when everything changed. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to share him. How to be around Ethan again. How to trust that he won't disappear back into his work once the novelty wears off. Grace touched her arm gently. Look at that workbench he set up. Those art supplies. He's not trying to buy Lucas's love with expensive toys. He's trying to create a space where they can build something together. That's not novelty, Sarah. That's my son finally understanding what really matters. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Lucas burst back into the room, eyes shining. Mom, Dad has a whole workshop full of computer parts. And he says we can use them to finish my build. Can we stay a little longer? Please? Dad. The word hung in the air, new and weighty and full of possibility. Ethan stood behind Lucas, looking as stunned as Sarah felt at hearing it for the first time. We can stay, Sarah heard herself say. But dinner first. You still need vegetables even on life-changing days. I could order something, Ethan offered hesitantly. Or, I actually learned to cook a few things. If you'd both like to stay? Lucas looked between his parents, a small smile playing at his lips. Maybe we could cook together? Like a family? Family. Another new word, another step into unknown territory. But watching Lucas pull both his parents toward the kitchen, chattering about computers and art and all the things they could create together, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected: hope. The kitchen in Ethan's modern house came alive for the first time as 3 generations of Carters worked together preparing dinner. Lucas stood between his parents at the large island counter, carefully chopping vegetables while Sarah made sauce and Ethan handled the pasta. You really learned to cook? Sarah couldn't hide her surprise as she watched Ethan confidently move around the kitchen. About 5 years ago, he admitted, checking the pasta. Living on takeout got old, and I remembered how much I loved those Sunday dinners we used to cook in college. Lucas looked up from his carrots. You guys used to cook together? Your mom taught me everything I knew back then, Ethan smiled at the memory. Though I nearly burned down our apartment trying to make her birthday dinner once. The fire department was not amused, Sarah added, fighting a grin. But the thought was sweet. Grace and Tom sat at the breakfast bar watching the scene unfold. This reminds me of when you were little, Ethan, Grace said. You always wanted to help in the kitchen, measuring ingredients like they were chemicals in a lab. Lucas does the same thing, Sarah said softly. Everything has to be precise. Cooking is just chemistry you can eat, Lucas declared, making everyone laugh. As they moved around each other in the kitchen, the initial awkwardness began to fade. Lucas asked questions about his parents' college days, and the stories flowed naturally. For a moment, it felt like they were just a normal family making dinner together. Did you know Dad built a robot that could make coffee? Lucas asked Sarah excitedly. He still has it in his workshop. I remember that robot, Sarah smiled. It only worked about half the time, but your father was so proud of it. Hey, that robot got us through finals week, Ethan protested, then paused. I still have the drawings you did of it, actually. They're in my office. Sarah looked at him in surprise. You kept those? I kept everything, Ethan said quietly, their eyes meeting over Lucas's head. The moment was broken by the timer going off. As they settled around the dining table with their meal, Lucas between his parents and his grandparents across from them, the conversation turned to future plans. I was thinking, Ethan began carefully, if it's okay with your mom, maybe you could come over on weekends sometimes? We could work on projects together in the workshop. Or anything else you'd like to do. Lucas looked hopefully at Sarah. She took a deep breath. I think that could work. As long as it doesn't interfere with your schoolwork. Maybe. Ethan hesitated. Maybe sometimes Sarah could join us too? We could all have dinner together like this. The question hung in the air, full of possibility and uncertainty. Lucas held his breath, looking between his parents. One step at a time, Sarah said gently. But, yes, sometimes. Tom cleared his throat. You know, son, the company's annual family picnic is coming up next month. It might be a good opportunity for everyone to spend some time together. Away from the office. A picnic? Lucas perked up. With games and stuff? And the best ice cream truck in Seattle? Grace added. Your father used to eat his weight in chocolate sundaes. Still does, Tom stage whispered to Lucas, making him giggle. As they finished dinner, Lucas helped clear the table, then pulled out his laptop. Dad, can I show you the new feature I added to my art program? I think I fixed the color matching algorithm. Of course. Ethan's face lit up. He glanced at Sarah. Would you like to see it too? You'd understand the artistic aspects better than I would. Sarah moved to join them, watching as Lucas pulled up his program. Together, they created a digital artwork, Ethan handling the technical settings while Sarah advised on color theory and composition. Lucas beamed as his parents worked together, their old chemistry resurfacing in this new context. It's beautiful, Grace said, looking at the finished piece. You should frame it, Lucas. Your first family collaboration. Family collaboration. The word seemed to touch something in all of them. This wasn't just dinner or a project. It was the beginning of something new, something they were all creating together. Later, as they prepared to leave, Lucas hugged Ethan impulsively. Thanks, Dad. For everything. Ethan hugged him back tightly, his eyes meeting Sarah's over their son's head. In that moment, they shared an understanding. Whatever happened between them, whatever complications lay ahead, they would find a way to make this work. For Lucas. For the family they could still become. Text me when you get home? Ethan asked Sarah softly as she gathered her things. She nodded, remembering countless similar exchanges from their college days. Some things it seemed never changed, while others, like the precious gift of their son's love, were brand new and full of promise. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Tech billionaire's secret son discovered. Blazed across tabloid headlines, accompanied by photos of Lucas at the Young Innovators competition. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications and calls from reporters. I'm so sorry, Ethan's voice was strained over the phone. Someone from the competition must have leaked it. I've got my PR team working on damage control. Sarah watched through her home office window as another news van parked on their quiet street. Lucas can't go to school like this. There are reporters everywhere. Pack some bags, Ethan said decisively. Come stay at my place. The security is better, and the media can't get past the gates. Ethan. Please, Sarah. Let me protect our family this time. Our family. The words hit her hard. Before she could respond, Lucas burst into her office. Mom, my friends are sending me all these articles. They're saying Dad abandoned us, but that's not true, right? You never told him about me. Sarah pulled her son close. It's complicated, sweetheart. Your dad and we both made mistakes back then. But what matters is now. Within hours, they were settling into Ethan's guest rooms. Lucas immediately disappeared into his room to set up his computer, while Sarah stood awkwardly in the hallway with a small suitcase. I called the school, Ethan said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. They're arranging for Lucas to do his coursework remotely until things calm down. And I've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow to address everything. A press conference? Sarah's stomach churned. Ethan, we need to talk about how we handle this. Lucas isn't just another PR situation. I know that. His voice rose slightly, then immediately softened as he saw Lucas peek out of his room. I know. That's why I want us to do this together. All of us. Later that evening, after Lucas had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found Ethan in his home office, surrounded by papers and laptop screens. The company stock dropped 8 points today, he said without looking up. The board is concerned about stability. Some shareholders are questioning my judgment, saying I've been distracted. Are you? Sarah asked quietly. Distracted. Ethan finally met her eyes. Yes. But for the first time in 10 years, I'm distracted by something that actually matters. Sarah sank into a chair across from him. We need to be careful, Ethan. Lucas is excited now, but he's sensitive. If you let business pull you away again. I won't, he interrupted firmly. I've already started restructuring my schedule. Delegating more to the executive team. I'm not missing any more of his life. And the press conference? I want to be honest. Tell the world that I didn't know about Lucas, but now that I do, I'm committed to being his father. That we're all figuring this out together and we deserve privacy to do that. He hesitated. Unless you'd rather not be mentioned? Sarah thought about the reporters outside her house, the speculation already running wild. No, we need to present a united front. For Lucas. They worked late into the night, crafting a statement that felt true to their complicated situation. When Sarah finally headed to bed, she found Lucas sitting in the hallway outside his room. I thought you were asleep, she said, sitting beside him. Do you think things will ever feel normal again? He asked, leaning against her shoulder. Normal is overrated, she smiled, kissing his head. We're creating something better than normal. The next morning, as they prepared for the press conference, Lucas surprised them both by asking to speak too. Are you sure? Ethan asked, straightening Lucas's tie, one of his own that had been carefully knotted to fit their son. People are saying all sorts of things about our family, Lucas said firmly. I want them to hear from me too. Sarah and Ethan shared a look over his head, pride mixed with protective concern. Their son was proving to be braver than either of them. As they stood together behind the podium, cameras flashing, Sarah felt Ethan's hand brush against hers. A small gesture of support, reminiscent of how he used to steady her nerves before college presentations. Some things, it seemed, never changed. While others, like watching their brilliant, brave son step up to the microphone to defend his newly found family, were wonderfully, terrifyingly new. The Innovatech press room fell silent as Lucas stepped up to the microphone, his parents standing protectively on either side. Despite his nervousness, his voice came out clear and strong. Hi, I'm Lucas Mitchell Carter. You've probably been writing a lot about me and my family lately. I wanted to tell you my side of the story. He glanced at his parents before continuing. My mom raised me by herself and she did an amazing job. She taught me about art and creativity and following my dreams. And now I have my dad too, who shares my love for technology and building things. Sarah fought back tears as Lucas continued. I know everyone wants some big dramatic story, but it's actually pretty simple. My parents were young and made choices they thought were right at the time. Now we're all choosing to be a family. That's it. That's the whole story. Ethan stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Lucas's shoulder. My son is right. While I regret the years I missed, I can't change the past. What I can do is be here now, committed to being the father he deserves. He looked at Sarah. We're asking for privacy as we navigate this new chapter in our lives. The reporters erupted with questions, but Kate smoothly took control, limiting them to pre-selected journalists. As they answered carefully worded questions about co-parenting and future plans, Lucas's hand found its way into both his parents' hands. Later that evening, as they celebrated surviving the press conference with takeout Chinese food in Ethan's kitchen, Lucas's phone buzzed repeatedly. My friends say we're trending on social media, he announced between bites of lo mein. People are calling us the tech family reunion, and making memes about Dad's face when I started speaking. Oh God, Ethan groaned, but he was smiling. What are they saying? Mostly good stuff. A lot of people are sharing stories about reconnecting with their own parents or kids. Lucas scrolled through his phone. And your company's stock is going up again. People like that you're putting family first. Sarah watched them together, seeing new similarities in the way they both attacked their food with the same single-minded focus. Your grandmother called. She said you did beautifully. Speaking of family, Ethan set down his chopsticks. I was thinking, would you both like to come to my parents' lake house this weekend? Get away from the city and the cameras for a bit. Lucas's eyes lit up. The one with the boat? Grandpa mentioned it. We could all use a break, Sarah agreed, surprising herself. But I have that deadline. Bring your work, Ethan suggested. The lake house has great Wi-Fi, and there's a perfect spot for drawing on the deck overlooking the water. You always said you did your best work near water. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest at him remembering that detail. You still have that old hammock? Two now, actually. And Lucas, there's a robotics lab in the basement. Dad converted it for when I used to visit during college breaks. As they planned the weekend, Sarah noticed how naturally they'd fallen into this new rhythm. Lucas moved between them easily, sharing his excitement with both parents, no longer afraid of dividing his attention or hiding his feelings. Oh. Lucas suddenly remembered something. Jake's mom wanted to know if I'm still doing the science fair next month. Now that everything's, you know. Of course you are, his parents said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Great. Lucas grinned. Because I have this idea for combining Dad's neural network coding with Mom's color theory to create something totally new. Maybe you could both help. The hope in his voice touched something deep in both Sarah and Ethan. This wasn't just about a science fair project. It was about building something together as a family. It's getting late, Sarah said softly, noting Lucas trying to hide a yawn. We should head home. Stay, Ethan said quickly. It's been a long day and Lucas is already settled in his room here. You both could stay. Sarah hesitated, but Lucas's pleading eyes won her over. Okay. But just for tonight. As they cleared away the takeout containers, Ethan pulled out a familiar-looking tin from a cabinet. I still keep your favorite tea, he admitted. Never got used to any other kind. Sarah accepted the steaming mug, breathing in the familiar jasmine scent. Some habits, it seemed, died hard. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Lucas hugged them both before heading to bed, his arms trying to gather them closer together. Today was scary, he admitted. But we did it together. That's what families do, right? Watching him go, Sarah and Ethan shared a look of pure parental pride. Their son was teaching them as much about family as they could ever teach him. The lake house emerged from the morning mist like something from a dream, its large windows reflecting the calm water. Sarah hadn't been here since college, but the scent of pine and cedar brought memories flooding back instantly. This place hasn't changed at all, she murmured as they pulled up the gravel driveway. Some things have, Ethan smiled, pointing to where Lucas was already racing toward the new treehouse that Tom had built for his grandson. Dad's been busy making additions. Grace met them on the wraparound porch, coffee cups in hand. I thought you might need this after the drive. Lucas, honey, want some hot chocolate. Inside, the house was a perfect blend of rustic comfort and modern technology, much like the family itself. Lucas bounced between exploring his grandfather's workshop in the basement and testing out the new art supplies Grace had thoughtfully placed in what was now his room. Mom? Dad? His voice echoed through the house. Come see what Grandpa's building. They found Lucas and Tom in the workshop, bent over what looked like a miniature robotics project. It's a solar-powered boat, Tom explained. Thought we could test it on the lake this weekend. Like the one we built that summer, Ethan said to Sarah. Remember? The one that sank after 10 minutes? Sarah laughed. How could I forget? This one won't sink, Lucas declared confidently. We're using new materials. Plus, Mom can help with the design to make it more hydrodynamic. As they worked together on the boat, Sarah noticed how naturally they all fit into their roles, Lucas combining his parents' talents, Ethan handling the technical aspects, herself adding artistic touches, while Tom offered guidance and Grace documented everything with her camera. Later that afternoon, Sarah sat on the deck working on her deadline project. The lake view was just as inspiring as she remembered. She heard laughter from the water and looked up to see Ethan teaching Lucas how to skip stones, the same way Tom had taught him years ago. He's good with him, isn't he? Grace said, joining Sarah with fresh coffee. Ethan was so worried he wouldn't know how to be a father. He's trying, Sarah admitted. That means everything. You know, Grace hesitated, Tom and I kept all the videos and photos from Lucas's childhood that you sent. We'd love to share them with Ethan, but only if you're comfortable. Sarah watched as Lucas successfully skipped a stone 4 times, jumping with excitement as Ethan caught him in a proud hug. Yes, she said softly. I think it's time. That evening after dinner, they gathered in the living room. Tom set up the projector while Grace brought out albums and flash drives full of Lucas's childhood moments. This was his first art show, Sarah explained as a photo of 5-year-old Lucas proudly holding a crayon drawing appeared on the wall. He won first place. Just like you did in the University Art Festival, Ethan remembered. Each photo brought new connections, new threads weaving their past with their present. Lucas sat between his parents on the couch, occasionally adding his own memories to the stories. When they reached a video of his first coding competition, Ethan couldn't hold back his tears. I'm so sorry I missed these moments, he whispered. But you're here now, Lucas said simply, hugging him. And we're making new memories. As if to prove his point, their solar-powered boat test the next morning turned into an impromptu family celebration when it not only floated but completed 3 perfect laps around the lake center. We did it. Lucas cheered, hugging both parents at once. Our first successful family engineering project. Sarah caught Ethan's eye over their son's head. Success meant something different now, measured not in stock prices or project launches, but in moments like these, in the way Lucas's smile held echoes of both of them, in the future they were building together. That night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Sarah found Ethan sitting on the dock, looking at the stars. She sat beside him, their feet dangling over the water just like in college. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for sharing all those memories with me. For giving me a chance to be part of his life now." "Thank you for being someone worth sharing it with," she replied. The night air was full of possibility, like the summers they'd spent here dreaming of their future. A future that had taken an unexpected path but had somehow led them back here, with something more precious than either of them could have imagined. 1 month later, the Innovatech annual family picnic transformed the company's sprawling grounds into a celebration of new beginnings. Lucas stood proudly next to his science fair project display, the AI art program that had first brought his family together, now enhanced with both his parents' input. "And see, when you combine the neural network with color theory," he explained enthusiastically to a group of employees' children, "it's like the computer can understand not just how to make art, but why certain choices feel right." Sarah watched from nearby as Ethan, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual suits, helped Lucas demonstrate the program. The CEO they'd written about in magazines had been replaced by something far more valuable. A father who showed up, who listened, who learned. "He's changed," Amy said, joining Sarah with ice cream cones for both of them. "The whole company has noticed. He smiles more, takes time to talk with people about their families, not just their projects." "We've all changed," Sarah replied, watching Lucas pull his grandparents into his demonstration. Grace and Tom had become regular fixtures in their lives, Sunday family dinners now a cherished tradition. The past month had brought challenges. Paparazzi still occasionally camped outside their homes, gossip columns speculated about Sarah and Ethan's relationship, and they'd had to navigate the complex waters of co-parenting in the public eye. But they'd faced it together, putting Lucas's needs first. Ethan had surprised everyone by restructuring Innovatech's policies, introducing more family-friendly work hours and extending parental leave. "Success means nothing if we miss the moments that matter," he'd announced at a board meeting. As the sun began to set, Lucas's program created a stunning digital artwork on the main display screen, a blend of technical precision and artistic beauty that perfectly represented their unique family. "Mom, Dad." Lucas called them over. "I want to show you something new I added." He typed a few commands and the screen filled with a collage of their family photos from the past month, coding sessions with Ethan, art projects with Sarah, game nights with the grandparents, all woven together in a digital tapestry. "It's a family archive program," he explained, "because sometimes the best innovations come from remembering where we've been while looking forward to where we're going." Ethan put his arm around Sarah's shoulders as they watched their son present his creation. "He got your heart," he said softly, "and somehow ended up wiser than both of us." Sarah leaned into him slightly. "He got that from having to navigate between two worlds. Now he's teaching us how to bring them together." Later, as they packed up Lucas's display, he turned to his parents with serious eyes. "You know what I learned from all this?" "What's that, buddy?" Ethan asked. "That success isn't just about making money or being famous. It's about having people who love you and loving them back. About fixing mistakes and trying to be better. About building something together." He grinned. "Even if sometimes the first version crashes and you have to debug it." Sarah and Ethan shared a look over their son's head. Out of the mouths of babes came the truest wisdom. Their story wasn't about a CEO discovering his son, it was about a family discovering that love, like the best code, could be rewritten, debugged, and made stronger through every iteration. As they walked to their cars together, Lucas between them holding both their hands, they were no longer the tech billionaire, the artist, and the secret child. They were simply a family, writing their own program for happiness, one line at a time. Thank you all for watching this incredible journey of love, redemption, and the true meaning of success. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others who might need a reminder that it's never too late to rebuild connections and create something beautiful together. And if you'd like to support more content like this, consider showing your appreciation through super thanks. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories to life. Remember, in life's complex algorithm, the most important variables are the connections we forge, the love we share, and the courage to debug our mistakes and start anew. Sometimes the most successful upgrade isn't in our technology, but in our hearts. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this story or your own experiences with family reconnection. Every story matters and every connection counts.